The 12th Doctor and Clara are back. 6 months after the quest for Scovox began, the series continued this week with its second instalment, Winner Takes All. But why has it taken so long for this new figure adventure to reach your screens? Watch on to find out. In the summer of 2015, with the first episode of the Quest for Scovox beginning production, I set out to plan the next story of the series. In order to take away some of the pressure, and to also offer some variety in style, it was decided that this episode would be a co-write. The writer I approached to take on this task was Christy Keaveney, aka White Point Star Productions on YouTube. I had been impressed with his scripts for his own figure adventures, so felt he ticked all the right boxes. Luckily, Christy accepted the challenge of writing the script, and Winner Takes All was born. The script was developed gradually as part of the collaboration process, and went through 5 draft stages before becoming the final episode. After many months of work, in early February 2016, the script was finally finished, with only minor tweaks coming thereafter. It was also around this time that I began to think about sets, designing and printing off an extra wall to fit onto my existing 3.75-inch scale TARDIS set. Although the opening TARDIS scene was filmed a few weeks later, GCSE revision took over soon after, and I was unable to fit in much time at all to devote to the project. When filming resumed in early July, I took the decision to remount the scene I had previously recorded, as well as some brief scenes set in the corridors of the arena. As each set was designed separately, editing generally took place immediately after scenes had been filmed, depending on the availability of lines from voice actors. The next scenes to be recorded were those set in Mr. Zorvak's office, before the scene set in the arena itself a short time later. The arena set was based on that of the 3.75-inch scale TARDIS from AFT Downloads, and had various paper corridors stuck on it in the background to give the illusion of a much larger location. Filming concluded on the 5th of August, nearly a year after scripting had begun. With the start of the Rio 2016 Olympics just around the corner, I took the opportunity to release Winner Takes All on the first day of the Olympics, a suitably sporty themed national moment, fitting in with the key themes of the story. However, with other commitments during the week before release, it was always going to be a race against time to get the episode completed. Fortunately, I managed to prepare the final edit the night before and upload it to YouTube, scheduled to be released on Saturday the 13th of August. I'm delighted with the response the episode has received so far, and would like to take the opportunity again to thank everyone who has watched it, and for all your kind words in the comments. Before I reveal some of my plans for the next episode of the Quest for Scovox, I'm going to briefly answer some of your questions about the making of this story. Rebel Hoovian asks, when did you decide that Captain Jimmy Pye would be a perfect fit for the character Mr. Zorvak? And also, what made you decide to create an episode that was co-written by someone else? Well, Captain Jimmy Pye had been asking for a while, I think, if I had any roles coming up, any villains in particular, and while I had given him a very small role in Genesis of the Cybermen at Christmas, I was always kind of saving him in the back of my mind for something a bit bigger, more menacing, villainous, and I always had him in the back of my mind really to play this role, because I just wanted a really evil, ruthless villain. So I can't exactly pinpoint when it was that I decided that he would be perfect for the part, but it was definitely a long time in the making. And the second part of that, well, I've kind of touched on this already. I just thought it would be easier to have an episode that was written or co-written with someone else, just to take the pressure off, really, and let me focus on other things like other episodes or filming or editing different parts of production. Bowtie Animation asks, what led you to choose certain species/enemies to feature in Winner Takes All, i.e. Ice Warriors and the Zygons amongst others? Well, the Zygons were always going to be in it as one of the main villains, really. I just thought the idea of them being able to shapeshift in this arena, obviously that's breaking the rules, so I thought it'd be interesting to add them in there, to just add an extra element, an extra dimension really to the story. And the Ice Warriors, that was quite a late addition actually, it wasn't in the script, but when I was simplifying some of the fight scenes, I decided to basically limit all the fighting, all the action down to a boxing ring, and I only had limited figures of other aliens available in the scale, you know, the Star Wars creatures and things that appear in the background. So I thought, why not throw an Ice Warrior in there? I'd only ever used that figure once before, very briefly for another cameo actually, in my previous series, so I thought I'd give them a slightly bigger role here, just because I like the Ice Warriors, and I don't feel I've done them justice yet. And I think one day I'd really like to do one with lots of Ice Warriors together, maybe set on Mars or something. I think that'd be pretty epic. Hoovian Fan 2003 asks, how did you build and find the sets for the episode, and what sort of 3.75-inch figures did you use, like from what different ranges? Well, the sets all came from AFC downloads, but were somewhat modified, depending on the set. I mean, the TARDIS, that just came straight from AFT, but other sets, for example, I don't know, the storeroom where the Zygons hide out, that was a kind of combination of various parts from 42, I think, and from Dalek, that the room that the Dalek is kept in the Metaltron. So it's just a case of looking on that website and finding things that are kind of similar or suitable, and then modifying them slightly to get something a bit different. And as for the other 3.75-inch figures, well, I've briefly touched on this already, but I think all the ones I used were from Star Wars, really, because I bought them for a previous figure adventure, The Ultimate Upgrade, which was part of my first series of YouTube figure adventures. And I just decided it would be easier to reuse those figures here. I don't think anybody would notice, because back then, 2 years ago, my videos weren't really being watched much, so I don't think anybody would notice if I just reused these figures here in the background. I also believe there are 2 Poundland figures in there. There's kind of really badly painted, bulky cyborg men. They were bought for The Ultimate Upgrade as well, and I'll just reuse them here to make up the numbers, really. So the figures came from Star Wars and Poundland. Tanuki Billy asks, what was the inspiration behind this episode? Well, I'm not entirely sure why, and I can't remember the initial thinking, but I always wanted to do an episode set in an alien arena. I thought that was something that the show should have done really already, and while we've had similar kind of things, like for instance in Bad Wolf and the Passing of the Ways, which is referenced in this story, it's from the same era, I felt we needed something quite striking, you know, with aliens fighting and lots of violence, because myself, I don't really like sport that much, and I guess I wanted to kind of show that there is a fine line between sport and sport being violent as well, and also making profit out of sport and money out of sport as well. So all these ideas made up the episode, really. Cyberleader1010 asks, how exactly did the process of co-writing the story with Christie take place? Is it something you'd consider doing again? Well, it was mainly a lot of emails, you know, sending the script to and from and attaching different versions, different drafts, and it did take a while, I will admit, but that's because, I guess, me and Christie as well, anybody has other commitments in their lives, and particularly when you've got 2 people involved, you know, and 2 people's responsibility, it's going to inevitably take a very long time. But having said that, I am pleased with the result, and I probably would consider doing it again, yes. Not loads, purely just because of the time it takes, but every once in a while I think to add a different flavour, different style, then why not, yeah. Osmond Plays asks, will you make another figure adventure DVD? Yes, I will. I'm going to make a cover of this story when I get a chance and post it somewhere online like Twitter or Flickr or something like that, so people can download it and print it off and make their own DVD and put it on the shelf if they wish. Shaggy Rogers asks, how many ideas/drafts of the script did you go through until you came up with the final result? Well, I have already mentioned, I think it was about 5 kind of official drafts, but obviously with the collaboration process and with me and Christie emailing different versions of the script to and from each other, then there are lots and lots of different versions. But like I say, 5 official kind of drafts of the scripts that are distinctly different to warrant being called a separate draft. Type 40FA asks, what kind of set designs were you and White Point Star thinking of when you were creating this story? I mean, while we both did the scene descriptions and set descriptions, it was really down to me to kind of design and make the sets how I envisaged them, because obviously, on a more practical level as well, I'm the one that's going to be filming the sets, so I'm going to need something that works. And that might mean when I'm designing it that I need to make an alteration or modification. But yeah, Christie did write some scene descriptions and set descriptions, which I did base my sets on. The Mechanoid asks, who would you consider to be the main enemy of the story? Now this is an interesting question, one that I was hoping someone would ask, really, I think, subconsciously. Because obviously there are the Zygons on one hand, but also Zorvak as well, who is ruthlessly evil. And I think it would have to be him, really, and his corporation that's running the games. The Zygons are ruthless and evil, and I suppose they are trying to steal the leg for their own use, you know, to make copies of the Scovox Blitzer, presumably to start wars with and things, which obviously isn't good, but I think they are more willing to cooperate with the Doctor and work with the Doctor in this story, and there is a bond of trust there, where the Doctor says, if you agree to this, I will give you the leg. Obviously he doesn't, which is not very good, so I suppose actually neither Zorvak, the Zygons, or the Doctor have a clear conscience as far as the story is concerned. But if I were to kind of order them, I think I'd put Zorvak at the top, just because he is so ruthless and so sadistic. He also asks, do you think the story could have worked well if it wasn't part of the quest for Scovox? That is a tough question, really. I think, really, the idea of the Scovox leg and the idea of having to find the Scovox leg in each story, that is the kind of basis I started from for each of the stories of the series. So it is hard to imagine, really, that the Scovox leg is kind of central to the story, because it's the thing that connects the Doctor and Zorvak and the Zygons, and that's why the Zygons trust the Doctor and work with the Doctor, and that's why Zorvak is running the whole contest anyway. So it probably could work, but it's not something that I'm envisioning in my head, really. What was the most difficult scene to film / produce? Definitely the kind of fight scene, really. Although actually, it was done quite simply, I think. I didn't really use any too high-tech effects or techniques. It was just a case of lots of different camera angles and switching from one thing to another really, really quickly. So hopefully it didn't look like I was just hitting the asteroid down on the floor and just dropping him from my hand. But that was actually what I was doing. And his final question is, who are you happiest to have as a guest voice actor? Well, the 2 stars really for me are definitely Jimmy Wolfe and James Blowers. I've already mentioned why I like Jimmy Wolfe, really, but he did do a fantastic job with the script, making Zorvak a really quite evil character. But James Blowers as well was brought in at short notice to provide Zach's lines, and he did a great job. You know, he did lots of alternate takes, so I could pick which ones I wanted. And as for his voice itself, it just really suited the part, I think. So definitely those 2 were the ones that I was happiest to get. But having said that, I was pleased with every single role. A big thanks to the cast, really, because they made this story, and each and every one of them did a fantastic job with the script they were given. Tom Bowen asks, when in the 12th Doctor's timeline is this story set? Now, yes, he's travelling with Clara, and yes, he's wearing a Series 8 variant costume, references to the Zygon inversion and Gallifreyan ships. Well, yes, I know what you mean, but it doesn't necessarily set it after Series 9, in my opinion. This series was planned before Series 9 had aired, so I always envisaged it as taking place just between Series 8 and 9, really. But I don't think as yet I've really set in stone where it is. I've not really dropped any hints in any of the stories. You know, it could probably take place at any point after the Caretaker and before Face the Raven, really. As for those references, the Zygon inversion one, the way I interpreted it is that it was a reference to the day of the Doctor securing a home for 20 million Zygons on Earth. Although he does also say, I think, that he prevented a war between humans and Zygons. Yes, that could be interpreted as coming after the Zygon inversion, or it could just be that he found them at home and prevented conflict at that point, and he doesn't anticipate what's going to happen in the Zygon 2-parter. And the Gallifreyan ships, it doesn't necessarily mean it has to take place after Hellbent. I mean, the Doctor was bluffing anyway at that point in the story, because obviously the ships weren't really in orbit. He was going to get the Shadow Proclamation in to come and deal with Zorvak and the Corporation. So I think really, so far it's set in between Series 8 and 9, but I've not really decided myself yet, and I've not had any dialogue really that confirms and sets in stone whereabouts it is. However, there may be in the future, I don't know. And he also says, this episode is much shorter than Genesis of the Cybermen and Dying of the Light at 16 minutes. Will future Skybox episodes continue with this length? I didn't anticipate this story as being so short, but I guess kind of the fast-paced nature of it, really. You know, how all the scenes are quite fast-paced and come straight after each other, and there's you know, Zorvak 1 minute, and then the Zygons, and then this and that, and also the kind of fight scenes as well. I just think in general, looking back, this story is quite fast-paced. And although the script was about 26, 7, 8 pages long, which is quite similar to previous scripts that I've done, I think Dying of the Light in particular, that was more dialogue-based, and Genesis of the Cybermen as well, yes. So in those cases, I think more of the page was taken up with long dialogue, which is what made those stories longer. So it just depends, really. I can't really predict. But I would say that future episodes in the series would probably be around this length, but probably slightly longer, just because this episode was so fast-paced. And the final question I've got time for is from Doctor Who 101, and he says, will you ever make a story of 2 factions of Skovok Blitzers going face to face like the Daleks and Remnants of the Daleks? And the simple answer to this, quick answer, is no. Because in my headcanon, in my universe, and in this series, there is only one Skovok Blitzer, the same Skovok that was in The Caretaker and was blown up by the Nightmare Child at the beginning of this series. That's why it's so vital for the Doctor to recover all the legs of the Skovoks to avoid such a machine being created or recreated again. So unfortunately that won't happen. However, you might see However, on a different note, you might see the Daleks and a Skovok Blitzer go head to head in the future, so do watch this space. So thank you to everyone that asked a question. I wasn't able to fit all of them in, but I still do really appreciate them, so thank you very much. Now, as promised, I should probably reveal a little bit about the next instalment of the Quest for Skovoks. I will say at this point that the script has only just been started, so I can't really give a date, although I have worked out there were 27 weeks between Dying of the Light and When It Takes All. So if that's anything to go by, the episode will be out no later than the middle of February 2017. But quite honestly, I just don't know at this stage when it's going to be out. The episode will see the Doctor and Clara continue to go and find all the parts of the Skovok's Blitzer, as they have been doing so far in the series, and it will see the return of Professor Jones. Now, Professor Jones is a recurring character in My Figure Adventures, and he's probably been in the most episodes apart from the Doctor and Clara. Do go and check out his stuff if you haven't already. He's been in quite a few of my older figure adventures, and then also more recently he reappeared in his own spin-off, Zygons in the Palace. So please do check them out before he reappears in my main series and this story. As the Doctor says at the end of Winner Takes All in the TARDIS to Clara, modern day Egypt is where the next Scobox leg has been tracked to. So you can expect that as a setting to the story, although I don't want to reveal too much more at this stage, because there are some surprises that I want to kind of hold back really. Like it says as well, it will be called the King's Chamber. Make of that what you will, please do speculate in the comments, but I'm very much looking forward to making it and sharing it with you, hopefully before February 2017. So thank you very much for watching this video. Please let me know if you enjoyed this new confidential format more than my previous Q&As, where I've gone on a bit too much, I think. It's been probably a bit too boring and tedious for the viewer, and I will see you very soon for some more new videos. So thank you for watching, and bye for now.